site that should, hopefully, fingers crossed, have things a little bit more synced up, not quite as delayed. And if it is still atrociously delayed and unbearable for you folks, then of course we will do another little pause or stop hiccup before coming back so that we can stay on point with one another and keep having fun as we're hanging out here in our Dungeon Masters Tavern, the Dungeon Masters Workshop. So once again, we are Encounter Roleplay. We stream Dungeons & Dragons Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Believe it or not, over 100 hours of streaming every month for free for you folks on Twitch. We're here for the Dungeon Masters Workshop, our Sunday show where we talk about lots of different things related to running games specifically, either from the character or the GM's perspective, as we've seen. And we're going to keep going on with our discussion tonight, which is on advanced character concepts. Now, didn't mean to scare people with the name, advanced character concepts. All we really meant by that is sort of the Dragon Knight mode of doing things, as it seems to be coming out, is to just say that, ooh, the complaint is now blame Mitch. Well, that just sort of makes sense, given that I'm running the stream tonight. So, yep, you can just throw all of your comments towards me, and I will promptly disregard them while on stream. But it's all good. You can check our schedule. If you scroll down, the schedule has been updated. You can scroll down to see what campaigns we're running in our new seasons. We've got Solace on Mondays, running on the Cypher system, a kind of sci-fi future campaign. We've got a fantastic D&D 5th edition traditional high fantasy campaign every Tuesday. That's Encounter Roleplay's flagship campaign, The Broken Kingdom. Wednesdays, we've got Call of Cthulhu right now, and then Thursdays we're running viewer games. Hit !play in chat if you want to play games, because every Thursday we run a Westmarch game for you and with you so that you guys can hang out. So hit that follow button if you haven't. Check us out at encounterroleplay.com, Encounter Roleplay on Twitter. Check out our Patreon if you want to support our stream. All right, I think I've hit all the plug buttons, but I'll leave that to Lee to decide as the master of buttons, as I'm now going to start referring to her as. So we continue on talking about advanced character concepts, which is not meant to echo advanced Dungeons & Dragons at all, but maybe it is. And we're going to go right back to our initial slide here, just to talk about the overview, where we've been, what we've done so far. So we've talked about ways to think of character development beyond just what's suggested by your game system, whether it's Dungeons & Dragons, whether it's Pathfinder, ways to think about your character a little bit more in depth. So we talked about your origins and your history, talking about knowing a little bit of where you grew up, what the place was like, what your family was like growing up, what sort of family relations do you have, do you not have anymore? What was your education and childhood like? What kind of hobbies did you have as a kid? What kind of friendships or relationships did you have? And of course, early adulthood, what sort of profession did you enter into? Connections you had, determining life events, that sort of stuff. We talked about the BYO NPC rule, of course, making sure that your players bring to the table on session 0 when they're making their characters that there's an NPC in the world that they get to make, so that they can have fun and participate in the world building, in interacting, and it helps sort of embed or bury their character a little bit more in the world that you've created as the GM. It lets them care a bit more, they're automatically more invested, a whole lot of stuff going on. PC perspectives, we talked about some of those like present questions, like why is my character adventuring? What would my character do with 1 billion gold pieces? What does my character think his friends think of him? Questions like that to get a sense of your character's sort of state of mind at the moment. Excuse me again. And we talked about, of course, goals and growth, or the future of your character, because understanding your character is not just about the past, it's about what you're planning, or what do you think about for your posterity. So we talked about short, medium, long-term goals, and we talked about what a character might do during downtime, Welcome, my titular Professor Tesla. Welcome to the adventure. You are a gentleman and a scholar. It is good to have you here with Encounter Roleplay as we hang out talking about character concepts. I hope you enjoy in our second hour as we continue on here. And of course, stick around if you can for the third hour of tonight's show, as the third hour will be D&D and Chill, where we just hang out and answer/ask questions and do whatever it is we or you feel like. So, good to have you as we continue on with our Sunday night D&D and Chill. So I think I've covered the lot here. We talked about origins, BYO and PC, PC perspectives, goals and growth. If you missed any of that, if you want to see any of these other slides again, if you wanted to take some notes, incorporate some of this stuff into your games, you can always check out this video on YouTube, where it will be in the very near future. For your reference, ad infinitum. All right, so we're going to move into the next section of tonight, which is what I've really been looking forward to, and I know a couple people in chat have been looking forward to as well. We're going to start talking about rolled party connections. Now, for those of you who don't know, whenever I run a one-shot game, which you may have seen in some of the 24-hour streams that we've run, some other stream events where I've guested, I really like to have rolled party connections between my players. It's a great way when you're starting a new campaign, when your players don't necessarily have connections to one another yet. You're trying to find that why do they give a shit about each other? Why are they working together? Those can be tough relationships to sort of shoehorn as the GM, especially when you're running a one-shot, because you don't have a whole lot of time, you don't have a whole lot of depth behind you, and you don't have a whole lot of major events coming up in the future. So rolling party connections is a great way when you first start a session to say, cool, here is a thing that has happened between these two PCs. And if each player does that, then you've got like 6 different tangles. I call them tangles, where you're rolling connections between them. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like they've been adventuring for a few weeks, as opposed to just presuming that they know each other based on what they read to one another. So it adds a lot more depth, a whole lot of fun, and I've only heard good things from the players who've run it, so it's something that I really like and I really endorse. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to break down how I run rolled party connections, and then with the help of you guys in chat, we are going to make some fresh rolled party connection tables for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So the tables that I've been using currently were designed for the Cypher system. They were designed originally for games like Numenera, The Strange, and general sort of open world Cypher system games since the sort of open book came out last summer. So because those game systems don't have necessarily like an explicit sort of spectrum of classes like fighter and cleric and barbarian and druid, they just have kind of basic distinctions that are very similar to a D&D or 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons, where you've got like a martial character, a kind of social character, or a kind of magic using / expert type character. So they're very sort of general categories that can then be specialized in a diversity of ways to give you different flavors and different concepts. So even though I've done a lot of these rolled tables for 5th edition games, I'm actually using tables that only have 3 possibilities. It's either a martial character, a social character, or a magic using character. So I'm going to show you what these tables look like. We're going to walk through them. We're going to tell stories about, some of the situations that can be funny coming out of these tables. And then what I want to do for the last little portion of this 2nd hour, and then into D&D and chill, is we're just going to brainstorm while we're taking questions, ways to expand these random rolled party connection tables to have fully functional tables, 1 table for every single class in 5th edition, because it's something I haven't had the time to do, I haven't developed it yet, and it would be a really cool way to build something in chat that we're going to use in stream. At least for my part, I'm going to use it because I use them all the time when I do one-shots in all of our marathons. Thank you, Morphus, for the host. It is good to have you. Aragwen says it's a really interesting connection system, but you couldn't easily describe it. So yeah, we're just going to dive in. Let's just look at one of these tables so you guys get a sense of what I'm talking about. So here's the Marshall table that I've been using. So it's only a 6 result table, 6-sided dice, for rolling a party connection for a martial character. So I've been doing I've been rolling this table for characters that are barbarians, paladins sometimes, definitely fighters, sometimes clerics, that sort of thing. But again, when we get to the end of this, we're going to build these tables for each class in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So a martial character, you've got a fighter, you say, roll out a party connection. So they can get 1 of 6 results, which you guys can all see here, but I'll read through them because I am a big fan. So the first result, pick 2 PCs. You secretly want to see them fight to see which one of them is tougher. And welcome Faith in the Glitch for joining the adventure. You are a gentleman or gentlewoman and a scholar. It is good to have you here on Encounter Roleplay as we are hanging out for our Dungeon Master's Workshop, talking about rolled party connections at the moment. So when you've got a whole party and you want them to be tangled, you want them to be connected, but you don't want to wait 7 sessions for them to actually have things happen for them to have connections. So you give them a connection. Or rather, you have them roll on the table for a connection. So the martial character, if they roll a 1, they get to pick 2 PCs who they secretly want to see fight to see who's tougher. That's a funny one. The player gets to pick the PCs and see what happens. Result of a 2, the character once fought on opposite sides of one PC in a battle. Interesting connection. And again, the openness of these results are things that the characters and the players get to decide. So you say, roll me a d6, martial character. They say, I got a 2. You say, cool, pick one PC. I like to have them pick the PC before they hear the results. So I say, pick a PC, and they go, oh, okay, I'll go pick Jeff. And they say, cool. At one point, your character fought on opposite sides of Jeff in a large pitched battle. And then that player and Jeff get to figure out when that battle might have happened, you know, who they would have been fighting for, why they would have been on opposite sides, whether they knew that the other was there, that sort of thing. So lots of cool ways to figure out the actual specifics of these rolled party connections that the players get to figure out amongst themselves. It's no extra work for the GM at the outset. Rolling a 3 on the martial table, the character once carried one PC wounded out of combat. By contrast, rolling a 4, one PC once carried that character wounded out of combat. So different dynamic. Again, you can ask prompt questions once they find out these results. So, okay, Jeff, pick a PC. Okay, I pick Mary. Okay, Jeff, at one point, Mary carried you wounded out of battle. How does your character feel about that? Oh, well, shit, I don't know. Like, maybe he's, like, really embarrassed around Mary now, but then, like, secretly he's, like, trying to make it up to her and stuff. So, again, these are great prompts for your characters to start to get to know one another and to have these connections before they've even started stepping off and adventuring. How's it going, ASMS leader? It is good to have you. As we're talking about rolled party connections, one of my favorite things for setting up new characters, for session zeros, and for one-shots. We're most of the way through the martial table here. Another one, number 5, one PC is very unaware of their body and gets in your way. That can be a really funny one. Generally, you'd give them the whole thing rather than pick the PC first, because it wouldn't make sense if they picked the rogue who's really sort of good or controlled with their body, or it may be that the rogue, for whatever reason, just by accident gets in the way of the fighter all the time, even though the rogue really is very aware of their body. So again, these are malleable, they're manipulatable, they're just fun little prompts to get 2 PCs talking about how they feel about one another in a way that they haven't thought about before. So that Jeff and Mary can have a sense of how their characters interact. And I mean, I wish I could qualify more than just through my own experience how this very small gesture of, cool, Jeff, at one point Mary pulled you out of combat. That one little detail about this connected backstory that really becomes formative or provides a whole lot of material for PCs to really think through their characters and how to act. It really helps the players role play a new character, because everybody knows the first session of playing a new character can be really tough because you're still getting into it. You don't really understand quite exactly, even though you've got all of this information from this brilliant stream on how to develop an advanced character background. You still don't have a sense of how that plays out when you're reacting to things from the GM, when you're responding to the world. Cool. Ghost, you once acted against the PC for your patron, for Warlock. Yep, I've got my whole little chart here. I want all of the ideas for the D&D classes. You're predicting me. It is all good. Once I'm done showing you my base tables, which I'll probably like steal some of my favorite ones from, I'm wanting to be writing these for all of the classes in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, so I can start using those tables. And if you guys are really sweet about it and you really help, then I'll probably throw them up on the website for free so that everybody can use all these tables all the time. Warlock acted against another PC for your patron. Very cool. And then again, that little prompt, it lets the PC decide which PC, lets the PC decide how they acted against that person, and how they feel about each other because of it, how that sort of developed, what conflicts potentially came out of it. Okay, let's move on with the tables here. Martial character number 6, you feel extremely protective of one PC. Now, this one I usually try to get more interesting somehow, because of course the fighter is going to be protective of probably all of the PCs because they're used to getting stabbed and shot and stuff. So qualifying it a little bit more can be useful. So why in particular that PC is someone that they're protective of is a good question to ask. Maybe they remind them of a family member, a beggar in the town that they did their training in or something. So ask why that PC is one they're particularly protective of. And keep in mind, it doesn't even need to be that the PC needs protecting. For whatever reason, the fighter just feels that way, or the martial character just feels that way. We got one for Bard. Going to my Bard table, Irving says, PC2 once pulled PC1 into a show as a guest. Very cool. So for Bard, once pulled one PC into one of your shows. And you can ask what the show was, what role you were giving them, and then that PC can say, how did you feel about being pulled up on stage without your consent, or without even expecting it? All right, so that's my martial character table. I've used it for barbarians, fighters, paladins, clerics sometimes. So let's move on. Let's talk about social characters. The other sort of pillar, if you take the sort of old AD&D model of three conceptual differences with characters, the social character. This is your bard, potentially your rogue, possibly, whoever's playing the party face, whoever is a fairly adept conversationalist, orator, anyone who's just talkative. Let's say you've got a fighter who just the personality of the fighter is they're super talkative. Maybe you could have them roll on the social character table, if you like. You don't have to restrict it in that way. If they've got built into their character that they're super pretentious and they're always talking about their exploits, maybe they would go on the social table. And they don't need to know. You can just have them roll. Scardstar says, you were once calmed from a bloodthirsty rage by one PC. I fucking love that. One PC calmed terrifying bloodthirsty rage. Awesome. That's sweet. That is sweet. Your everyday's paladin. All right. Social characters. Let's talk through some of the funny things that I've had happen, and we'll make it all between Jeff and Mary. Social character. One PC is your worst critic. Your charm has no effect on them. That can be a great one because it can be a really good way to bring in a player, not necessarily the character, but a player who's a bit more reticent, doesn't speak as much. If they're the one that is not persuaded by the charm of another character, then it gives you a funny little prompt every now and then to sort of go back and forth as your face character is talking a little too much, which they probably will be if they're playing a face, as is appropriate. So that's a good one. Number two, one PC insists on you performing or orating or doing whatever your sort of social art is to them every night before they sleep. I think I had that connection between Josh and Finbar once in a previous game. Very, very good. Let's see, we've got a couple more coming in chat. Irving says for a rogue, PC once tried to steal from one of the other PCs, or a PC once served. So one of your underworld contacts. Definitely tried to steal from. So we'll say tried to pickpocket a PC and failed. That's a good one for Rogue, for sure. And Ghost of Christmas Future, of course, for a bard, says, one PC heckled you on stage. That's a good one. Heckled on stage. And Irving says, Paladin or Cleric, your god has shined his favor and asks for your protection of one PC. Ooh, so yeah, so that's... I struggled a little bit in starting to think about divine elements to incorporate into this, but that's a good one. So I'm going to write it on Pally and on Cleric. I may use it on only one, I may use it on both. But we'll say God ordained to protect one PC. So similar to the fighter element that I had in my martial character list, but more specific to the Paladin and the Cleric, to protect one of the PCs in the party in particular, because of what the god says. Ooh, faith in the glitch give me something with the monk. I like this. The PC has been trying to get PC2 to teach them their style for a long time, yet refuses. Okay, very cool. One PC is pestering to be taught some, and I'll just put generic monk trick, whether it's holding your breath, maybe resisting hot, cold temperatures, some little gimmicky thing that monks can do that other normal people can't. That would be cool. All right, number 3 on the social character list, one PC knows the secret to one of your performances and you're afraid they'll reveal it. So this is things like, like a magic trick or a coin trick, or, when you're speaking or orating, there's a certain thing you do with your hands or your body that like adds to the persuasion that about, something like that. Maybe you use magic to help. Maybe your instrument, you oil it with a certain type of oil and it gives it a certain sound that's particularly unique and inspiring. Something like that. But PC knows that secret trick and you're a little bit nervous about it. Again, you can choose, the players can choose whether they know that one another knows, that sort of thing. They can set the terms of this party connection. You're just giving them the prompt. Koyan says, a prompt for a paladin. You think something isn't right with one PC. You try to have an eye on him at all times. That is a good one. Suspicion in general is a good one. And maybe we can come up with a way to have a suspicious element for all of them. So like, how would a barb find someone suspicious? How would a druid find someone suspicious? So there's like one where it's like distrustful general as like the general connection, but it manifests differently or is prompted by different things because of the particular class. Skratsar says, social, you believe one PC could give you an in to a secret society or noble group. Yeah, that could be a good one. That could be under Bard or Rogue, I suppose. I'm going to put it under Rogue for now, as I do want these to be designed for 5th edition. You believe, not necessarily true. I like that distinction. One PC is an in to a secret organization or group. Very cool. All right, moving down the list, we're almost done here. Number 4 is kind of essential for a social character, as most of them are a little bit extravagant and potentially less cautious with their money. If your social character rolls a 4 on this rolled party connection table, they owe one PC a substantial amount of money. Number 5, you once convinced one PC to do something that they didn't want to do, and they regretted it immediately. That's an interesting one. That can cause major problems. That can be a formative event for both of these characters in how they relate to one another. Very big one. And number 6, you used to be in a romantic relationship with one PC's relative. Is always a fun one to play out, as you can imagine, the hijinks that can ensue. Koyan says, for a wizard, one PC borrowed a book, but it now says they didn't borrow anything. I love it. One PC, non-return / denied, book borrow. Super funny. Anybody who has a lot of books knows that feel. Tazani says, for a priest, so either cleric or paladin, deity has received a justified prayer from a mother of one of the PCs. Ooh, I like that. God received, I'll just put G for the deity, or D rather, D. Justified message from PC relative. And again, the character who rolls that gets to choose whether or not they've told this other PC about this or not. Again, you guys are probably starting to smell here that these are all related concepts. The fact that I'm tying in family members or sort of formative events. This all relates to background and how we know our characters and roleplay through them. Wizard, one PC has a bigger wand than you, all 17 inches. Healing class, you helped a PC get over an addiction. Malt Brising, I love that. That is very cool. Helped one PC get over an addiction. That's awesome. Get over addiction. Sweet. As a contrary to that, Koyan rightly says, as a druid, you made one PC have an addiction to a secret mushroom tonic. Made one PC addicted. And I'll just put mushrooms in general, because maybe you don't even make them into tea. Maybe you just are super into mushrooms. You know a shocking family secret about one PC. That is a good one. Let's make another category here for general. So general, we have family secrets are always good. Family secrets. Suspicious of XYZ is something that kind of applies across the board. Encounter Mitch. Could a rivalry thing between a pally and a cleric and or a monk and a warlock, where the holy class PC wants to try and convert the other PC to their faith, or the other wants to understand why they follow the religion they do? Irving, I would say for two reasons I'd probably avoid that on these tables. One, because it's promoting PvP type interactions or conflicts, which is never a good thing to have an abundance of, so you want to try and steer clear if you can from that sort of thing. And two, it also presupposes that there is another holy character. I want these tables to be as applicable as possible in many different family situations. I just saw family pop up in chat there. You want these tables to apply in any game. So let's say you've got one paladin and 5 rogues. That's not going to work. So you want to make sure that these tables are applicable. And that's kind of a central or general point you always want to keep in mind. If you're trying to make random tables for anything, you kind of have to go through every possible combination to make sure that none of them contradict one another or are weird. One of the DM workshops I'll do down the road, which I've planned, we just haven't done it, is on building NPCs. And I've got big D100 tables with 5 columns, and you just roll once on each table to build an NPC. And I had to kind of go through and make sure that none of the possible combinations really contradicted one another, so that you wouldn't have any kind of inconsistency. But I like the idea. If the players wanted to have some kind of connection like that, they totally could. Hello, Will's parents. It is good to have you here, and I'm glad you're enjoying and saying hi. Glad you've let Will out of the proverbial cage, as it were, to come hang out for a little bit as we're talking about our rolled party connections. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, indeed. Wasn't there a movie about that? The Joneses? Nah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Smith and or Jones. Very close, though. Very close. All right, 6, social character who was in a romantic relationship with a PC's relative. We can move on to magic using characters. General one from Ghost of Christmas Future. You think you saw one PC kick an orphan. I'm going to adapt that slightly. Saw one PC doing something you thought was illegal. So again, the players get to choose what they thought that PC saw. The PC who was supposedly watched and was doing the thing gets to choose whether or not it was what the person thought. Again, these connections are meant to give the players as much room to decide the details as possible. So you once saw the PC doing something that you thought was illegal, or at least wrong, or suspicious. Might I say suspicious? Koyan, the rogue. One PC gives you a long talk every time he sees you pickpocketing or picking locks. I will write it down. Something about picking locks and disliking it. My worry with that one, Koyan, is that it's sort of determining for one of the other PCs how they feel about something. Again, these tables are meant to sort of give an event or like a thing, like an incident that the players can choose how it happens. So rather than saying one PC really doesn't like that you pick locks and gives you a talk about it, you could have it say that pick one other PC, you are very eager to lecture them on their ways. So make it, rather than it being about the rogue having, these things being told to them, either for potentially the paladin or the cleric. I would say maybe the paladin I'll put it under, because paladins are so convicted. What I'll say is one of the potential rules for a paladin is they are very eager to lecture to one PC about a particular error of their ways or a particular thing. Gwen says, you feel guilty that one PC knows you steal things. Yeah, possibly. So, yeah, so the pickpocketing or the stealing, rather than insisting that another player feels a certain way, say that the rogue is like suspicious or worried that another PC doesn't agree with it. So suspicious or worried of another PC. Having mixed feelings about what they're doing. Again, these party connections are not meant to incite conflict necessarily between the characters. They're just meant to have like an interesting thing that they've sort of worked through. And they're also supposed to be kind of minor, not like earth-shattering. I would never put, you killed one of the PC's family members, because then that's promoting conflict. And the point is to promote connection and a unique spin on how they interact with one another. Not necessarily for them to be at each other's throats or to dislike one another. Let me scroll up here because I missed a couple. Gareth says, for magic users, you detect a great magic presence on one PC, but no one else seems to. Yep, big time. I'll put magic here as a general category. Detect magic presence. And that sort of relates to number 6, I suppose, on our rolled party connection table that I've used for general magic users, which we can go through now here quickly, just to give you a sense of the things that I've thought through. One PC is overly curious about your powers, and you can choose how you feel about that. Once you accidentally turned one PC into a tiny creature. Once you apprenticed under one PC's relative, again trying to bring in a family member, you can start to see me trying to force my PCs to come up with an NPC of their own through these random party connection tables. How's it going, Ratch? Number 4, one PC thinks your magic is unnatural and will only bring about bad things. And 5, one PC suffers an allergic reaction to your casting, allergic reaction of their choice. And you're convinced one PC's spirit is bound for darkness. So those are all some cool ideas that I've used in the past. I have used different tables. I think one of the 24-hour streams I didn't have my sort of streaming laptop on me, so I had to make up tables from scratch. So I have used different things. If you're watching through all the videos, there may be other results as well, but that's the beauty of these tables. Cool, I'm going to scroll up here and see what else we've got going on. Gareth had his magic user. Oh, Gad's Highland needs more dice. You could have saved one PC's family member, but you were too scared. Yeah, possibly, but again, that's sort of putting in a, I don't want to determine that a family member is dead. So something about, I think that's kind of related to, I think it was our paladin and cleric one. One of your gods, or your god has received a prayer from one of the PC's relatives, an urgent prayer. And you sort of are aware of this from your god, and you can choose to pass it on or not. Gwen says, for some reason you feel guilty. Yeah, we tracked that one. Devourer says he wished he had something like this when he was kicking off a campaign. I know it is a godsend for session 1 and 2 to get the dice rolling, as it were. Pounded dice. Scars are absolutely pounded dice are sweet. Kohan says, for the barbarian, I like it. You let one PC get a pounding in a tavern because you want them to be tougher. Get pounded in a tavern. I like that. Not too serious consequence. Makes a big statement about how your character feels about them, and they're definitely going to have strong feelings about you after that. Irving says, for martial classes, one PC knows that another once ran away from a fight, doesn't necessarily trust them to watch his back. Cool, cool. We'll put that under fighter. You know that one PC fled, and you're distrustful in combat. Very cool. Pimp, that's Ratch. Of course, fighter or barbarian, you're pretty sure if it came down to it, you'd definitely be beaten by / easily beat one PC in a scrap, regardless of whether you fought with or beside them. That's another one that we can put for fighter and for barb, and that's just sort of related to the one on the martial table, which is you really want to see two PCs fight to see which is tougher. One can be like, you're really, for whatever reason, if you're a martial character, you're generally going to be capable of like sizing up a combatant. For whatever reason, like one PC, like the way that they move somehow, like they just totally turn you off and you're not sure how to size them up. You have no idea how they're going to react, how they're going to be in combat. Now that's kind of funky. I'll put it under general. Reacting in combat, suspicious of ability. Because that only applies up until the first time you see them in combat, I suppose. But maybe you're worried whether they'd take you or you're really impressed or intimidated. I'll put sub in a bracket, impressed and curious maybe. Scartstar Druid, animals react oddly towards one PC. Love it, that's perfect. Animals react odd to one PC, and you leave odd very ambiguous. Doesn't necessarily mean they're violent or aggressive towards the PC. Let the PC choose. Maybe they get really sort of in heat. Maybe they're very aroused around that PC. Maybe they get very hungry. Maybe they like lick it. Maybe they like rub their faces like on its ankle. They just like there's something about this PC's ankles. Ghost of Christmas Future, you accidentally turned a tiny creature into one PC. I love that as a prompt. That's hilarious. I'm writing it as a note for myself. Turned creature into a PC. But again, that would undermine and take away that entire player character's background that they thought of. Yeah. Druid. One PC has strange reactions to / is irrationally scared of you when you're in animal form or performing druidic magics. I like it. I'm going to go with pick a PC. That one PC has an extreme fear of one of your animal forms. So maybe as a child, and again, these are all things that you leave to them to decide. Maybe as a child they were attacked by a dog, and so they've got this like fear of dogs, and they're deathly afraid of your wolf form. Bear form is fine because it's a bear and they know it's you, but like the dog thing just sort of triggers this subconscious emotional trauma that they can't get around. General, PC1 speaks a unique and rare language. PC2 knows how to speak it. Cool, cool, I like it. Rare language, and maybe I would put it under Bard, just because they're the most likely to know more languages. Bard, or possibly the intellect users, being the wizards, possibly sorcerer and warlock, but we'll put it under general, and I think I like it under Bard too. Rare language, and that doesn't need to be a spoken language, by the way. I don't know how fast chat is moving. I'm scrolling through it as best I can here. Who knows how far down it is. Phrasing, getting pounded in a tavern. I stand by what I said. Parents are Skyping Sid, first time they met her. That's adorable. Trey's entertaining. You're disgusted by a PC's fighting style, or lack thereof. Disgusted by PC's fighting style. And that could be like if it's a magic user, you just like, you're disgusted that like they stay back and they don't actually do anything. Sorcerer, your wild magic randomly made one PC's hair pink twice a month. We don't even need to say pink in particular or twice a month. I'm just going to say pick one PC once you hit them with wild magic. The caveat being they survived if it's like a terrible one. And if it happens to be pink hair, then it will be, but for the sake of D&D and enjoying it, they will get to roll on the spot to see what that was. You have an unexplicable crush on one PC. I really want to have that, but I don't know if I'd want to impose on it. I guess if they get to pick the PC, that's cool. Everybody has crushes. You wouldn't be this automata that doesn't have feelings, unless you are. Crush on one PC, and you're not sure if it's reciprocated. And we'll talk, I'm sure, down the road about how to run romance into encounters, how to build relationships like that without it getting out of hand. Turn creature into a gnome can be fun, absolutely. Gotta be careful you don't script other backstories. Yep, just their feelings or relations to one another. Had a PC with extreme fear of water, fun to play. PC1 claimed to be PC2 during a romantic social situation and continues to be called by that name. Oh, Ginger is taken off. Take it care, Lee. Sorry, I'm so delayed in seeing this, as I'm a little far behind in chat. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you had fun. Glad to hear that you're such a courteous dungeon master to your players, ensuring that they always arrive first. Extreme fear of water, said Highland Last. Very cool. Tazane, yeah, the claiming to be another PC during a romantic or social situation. Obviously, that's going to be our bard, so we'll go back to our bard list here. We're going to say... what's it called? What's the background? One of the backgrounds has an ability that you have an alternate identity. So we'll say as a bard, alternate identity, often mistaken for another PC. So at one point, you sort of pretended to be this other person that you made up, just like off the cuff for like a very small amount of time. But what you invented off the cuff and described was this other PC. So now every once in a while, people kind of get the two of you mixed up. That's a funny one. That's cool. Irving says you could build off that prompt and say that wild magic or something similar could have previously switched the mind of a PC and another creature until they were able to switch them back. Yes, possibly. That gives me a cool idea for a warlock one, because warlocks have all their weird sort of communing business. So what I will say is for warlock, pick one PC. You have their dreams when you dream at night, and you don't know why. So when you have dreams at night, they are their dreams, and they don't know that you have these dreams. It took you a while to figure out what the dreams were that you were having, because they were populated by people you didn't know. You were being called a different name. You were doing weird things. The dreams were precipitated by the fears and anxieties and thoughts of that PC, not by you. You were just kind of like watching them. But they're another PC's dreams. Very cool. Ghost of Christmas Future just wants to point out how funny the reverse of the magic using character result would be. I totally agree, and I would want nothing more than that. And I would probably take an NPC. I'd probably like put an NPC into a game where it's like that NPC was an animal that was turned into an NPC inexplicably. Devour. PC 1 has an irrational fear, and PC 2 knows about it. I like it. Okay, so how do I put this into the D&D characters? That'd be like a wisdom base, so classes that have high wisdom. So I'm trying to sort my general table here as best I can. So we'll say wisdom stuff, because you'd be very perceptive, which is the rationale behind that. One PC has a phobia. You know about it. Cool. We are flying through these. I love it. I'm glad we're doing this in chat, because these are going to be some wicked tables. And Bard. One PC gave you your largest tip ever. Good stuff. Good stuff. Gareth knows the program here. He's getting it. One PC gave you largest tip, or compliment, maybe. And it may not have been genuine, FYI. General or Rogue Bard from Gwen here. You know a secret or more detailed knowledge about something in one PC's background. They don't know you know it. That is a great general one. Absolutely. Know a secret about one PC. And of course, you get to determine what the secret is. So in that situation, again, to try and keep things balanced, because you don't want to make it seem like the player who's rolling gets to make determinations about other characters, what I generally do, so in that situation, player rolls, you know a deep, dark secret about one other PC, and they're not sure, they don't know that you know about this. I would say, cool, pick the PC whose secret you want to know, but then I would look to that player and say, okay, what's the secret that they know? So that that player has a bit of control over this dynamic, and so that it seems sort of balanced and fair, if that sort of makes sense. Bard, you know one song/fable about one PC. Ooh, yes, and I'm going to make it about one PC's family member, so that this is just as applicable to level 1s. Or I guess it could be about them, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a song or fable about some heroic thing. It could be from that one town, there's this like running song or joke about like the guy who passed out in the gutter because he drank too much meat or something. Let's do that. Let's just say one song/fable about one PC. Cool, cool, cool. Secret phobias, and you know them, all over that shit. Good, good, good. General, being more than a half mile away from one PC gives you a level of madness or a drawback. Cool, I'm gonna tweak it down a little bit so it's not so mechanically significant. But what I'll say is, being more than a half mile away from one PC, what could we do that's slightly more tame, but still, being a half mile away from one PC makes it so that you have no sense of direction. So totally, like you're totally disoriented, like you just can't tell where's north and where's whatever. Leaves you disoriented. Not mechanically per se, you're not dizzy, it's not difficult terrain, all that kind of stuff. But you just have a lot of trouble like tracking where you are. And maybe that's something we could put on the ranger table, because a ranger would be especially concerned about that. We'll put that as a maybe for Ranger. Koyan's given us one for Wizard here. So you guys are aware, the ones that we need a lot more for, there is none for Ranger right now, so start thinking for Ranger. Monk, there's not a whole lot, and Warlock Wizard are looking pretty bleak right now. Cleric, I love this, Gareth. One PC has a birthmark in the symbol of your god. I love that, that's hilarious. And it can be a really like not flattering birthmark as well in an unfortunate place. Bard, you always embellish or deface stories about one PC. Big time. Embellish, deface. The hero of Canton. Oh, man after my heart, Faith in the Glitch. Man after my heart. Shiny. PC1 is a form of anxiety or distress due to a past happening, and when they have issues with this, another PC can consistently help calm them down. Yeah, that's similar to the Barbarian, having been calmed by a PC from a terrifying rage. Let's go with Cleric again, I think. Cleric or Bard. You guys are starting to get the sense that a lot of these go towards the Bard, so you got to try and find a way to distinguish. Think less internal things and think more of events. So let's go back and put up our Marshall table while we're brainstorming. So if you think about these connections as events that cause a connection less than like an internal thing, we'll possibly get away from the charismatic characters a little bit and start thinking more in terms of things happening. So again, our Marshall character, you were carried out of combat, you carried someone else out of combat, those types of things. And of course, I'll probably use some of the favorites from these tables and incorporate them into each of the class tables themselves. PC1 has to be in physical contact proximity with PC2 in order to sleep soundly. That's cool. I'm going to put that under Warlock because they seem like they'd have the most like psychic connections required. Generally, your mouth moves when one other PC talks. Lol. Put that under Warlock as well. Needs proximity to one PC to sleep soundly. So not sleep in general, and I think that's a good distinction. You guys are starting to get a sense of how significant these connections are supposed to be. They're more like talking points for your players than anything. You wouldn't say that you need to be in proximity to sleep at all. That would be too impeding. Ranger, animal companion, feels a certain way. Very good. Your animal companion, I'll just put loves/hates one PC, and they can choose. Monk, your ki feels stronger around one PC. Ranger PC started making trouble in your neighborhood. Ki feels stronger. Yeah, Monk is a weird one. But it's like it's wisdom based. So it could be things related to perception. So tracking, like body language, that sort of thing. Obviously also their sort of physical control of their bodies. Ranger 1, PC really doesn't like your favorite terrain. That's a good one. One PC loathes your favorite terrain. Love it, that's a cool one. Ranger, you were once tracking a mark in the territory you lived in and had to let it go in order to save another PC, or another PC stopped you from catching your mark. Cool. One PC interrupted a hunt. Ooh, and a good one from there, and if it's already in chat, I'm sorry, I'm not stealing, I genuinely haven't scrolled down. One PC once got caught in one of your traps or snares. Is a hilarious one. In trap or snare, and again, the PCs themselves can choose or determine how long they were there, how traumatic it was. Was this just a rope trap? Was it a bear trap? And those are all things that are going to determine the long-term relational consequences of that event. Zarek says, for a monk, one PC continually attempts to engage in philosophical debates with you. Cool. One PC loves to debate philosophe. And I'll put existential Bleck as well as Cosmos, just so you really get the sense of how I feel about that. Warlock, your patron wants you to keep an eye on one PC. Ooh, that's mysterious and non-determinate. Your patron wants to keep an eye on one PC. Very cool. And they haven't told you why. And that might be uncomfortable for you. That may cause conflicts later. Ranger, rather unhappy if another PC does something that affects, hurts, or destroys favorite terrain. Highland Lass, I think that would probably be the case anyway. I don't even think you need to roll that as a connection. That's probably something that would come out of the PC who hates your favorite terrain. So let's say one person hates swamps, and all they do is like piss and moan and gripe about being in a swamp, and they're just like constantly like pulling up at shit. The Ranger would probably feel pretty bad about that. That's something that I would hope, as a GM, if you see a character like disrespecting the favorite terrain, you would ask the Ranger, how do you feel about this? No need for that to be a connection. I think that's implicit. That should always be there. It's cool watching the language used in this evolve. What do you mean? Say more. Please expand. Ghost of Christmas Future. Is the language evolving because you're in the future? Is that what you're talking about? Ranger, you don't like how one PC handles himself in your favorite terrain. I mean, that's kind of implicit. Very similar. Again, if I'm only going to have 6 to 8, if I've got one that's one PC hates your favorite terrain, I don't have too much focusing on that. Animal Companion always marks his territory. Oh, that's awesome. As an alternative to the love-hates PC, Animal Companion always marks one PC, so is constantly pissing on one of the PCs. And they can just deal with that. Monk from Koyan, one PC makes fun of your technique, and you'll show him its potential. Yeah, I mean, I feel like monks are often the target of derision, so that sort of makes sense. Teasing of technique. Monk, you don't like the way another PC handles themselves in day-to-day lives and feel they need more discipline. Yeah, sure. So instead of the general, you don't like how they handle them in life, we'll say one mannerism. So one PC has a mannerism that you can't stand. And the sort of subtext to that is like undisciplined, etc., etc. Very cool. Scarred Star, still on the Paladin and Cleric, loving that shit. One PC's family member was a member of your sermon or congregation. That's kind of cool. We still need more for Cleric. One PC family member was in your church. That's a good one. Magic Wielder is always trying to convince the monk of the superiority of magic over magical prowess. Again, Irving, careful, because that presumes that you have both a magic user and a monk in your party. All of these potential results need to work no matter what the composition is. So I couldn't put that on the monk table because there might not be a magic user. I couldn't put it on the magic user because there might not be a monk. But I like the idea of that sort of superiority thing. Koyan for the Barbarian, one PC. I'm going to, again, generalize this because, again, the more general these are, the more fun they are for the players and the more mileage they get out of them. So, great idea from Koyan. You think one PC cooks his meals way too much and it's driving you nuts. So I'm just going to generalize that a little bit so it's more interesting and the players can shape it more. I'm going to say for the Barbarian, you love or hate how one PC prepares meals. And you can choose the why, whether it's too much seasoning, whether it's overcooking, as being a good thing or a bad thing, and how that comes out, how that comes to be. Faith in the Glitch says, for a monk, PC 1's relative once trained with PC 2's master. That's a good one. One PC's relative trained with that monk's school, we'll just say, but we'll say in secret. So again, having secrets between PCs is good. Again, let them choose what the secret is. So one PC's relative trained in secret. Maybe he told his family, oh, I'm just going to the city for a few months to like investigate new business, but they actually like trained in this secret monk school. All right, so we are at our third hour. We're going to continue with this because I still need a couple more for each of these. Hold on, I've got 2 or 3 more to blast through. Scarstar, Judah Ranger, PC leaves strange footsteps. Ranger, that's a good one. Has a strange gait that you have trouble tracking. Gwen says for a monk, you're susceptible to 1 PC. Very good, very good. 1 PC entices you against your training. Cool, cool, cool. Barter Entertainer, 1 PC ruined a costume once. Ruined costume. Lol. Or instruments. They got your guitar to tune or something like that. Broke your pipe. Magic PC disapproves of non-magic PCs using magic. Example, the Ranger when she gets to level 3 and gets some spells. Possibly, there should definitely be the wizard having some kind of relation with magic to non-magic using PCs. All right. You can roll all night long. Well, thanks, Drake. Glad to know you would enjoy it. We are going to continue for another hour. We're going to take a 2-second break to make sure that the delay isn't too enormous for you guys. So we're going to pop out of stream and then back into Streamland to fix the delay. Last one here, Koyan Wizard. You don't think 1 PC is as good as you in any way? I mean, I think there's probably a lot of PCs that would feel that way, but we'll put it in maybe for Sorcerer, because Sorcerer is lacking quite a bit. You feel 1 PC is worse in every way, which is harsh. Maybe a little bit too close to encouraging that PvP stuff. I used the party's bard's loot that he dropped as a weapon once. There you go. Question for the break. What new races would you like to add into 5e? That we should talk about. New races, particularly those of you who played previous editions of D&D and have seen other races. Scratstar wants Ratfolk, Kobold, and Goblins. Cool. We got some questions coming in. So, I'm going to take a 30-second break. We're going to pull the stream down for a second so that we can take, so I can take a bio break, but also so that we can fix this delay a little bit because Twitch has been twitchy all evening. Then we'll dive back into the 3rd hour of our Dungeon Masters workshop tonight. We are Encounter Roleplay. My name is Mitch. I am hanging out for the next hour for hashtag D&D and chill, where we're just going to answer questions, talk about questions. We can fill out more of this table. I've already got lots of stuff here. Do not panic, as Gareth is saying. The mods will be here. I will still be here in chat. Nobody's really going anywhere. If you haven't hit that follow button and hang out for the party as we stream Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 4 to 7 p.m. EST, Dungeons & Dragons, over 100 hours a month. We are now calculating, which is kind of ridiculous, kind of absurd, but it is what it is, and we love it, and we're not going to stop. So you might as well hang out. All right, I'm going to do the super awkward pause and wait, where the sentence will get cut off midway, so that I can ensure that I can stop the stream without cutting anything else out before I jump back in, so that we can fix this delay. Blame Mitch because there are no deep gnomes or Durger. Faith in the glitch. I totally agree. And we will be back very shortly, where we can talk more about Rolled Party Connections. And I'm going to mumble.